So I'm in the floors drawing, and this is the 3D view. It's got this ambient shadow on it, so I'll just turn that off to start off with. So under the graphic display options, we'll click on that, and under shadows we'll just untick ambient shadows and then OK that. So that's tidy that up a little bit. What I will do is put a curtain wall sort of on this face. Now this is the west elevation, this is the south elevation, north and east. If I go to the top view, this sort of represents the project settings, so north, west, south and east, and this one is actually showing us the true orientation of the project based on our orientated true north that we looked at last week. So if this is confusing for you, you can turn this thing off. This is another little tip. So if I hit this drop down context menu, go to options, and then under the view cube, if I didn't want to see the compass, I'll keep it on. You can untick that and then OK that, and that will turn this thing off. So if you're wondering why north's down there, it's because that's where it is in reality to the building. But we'll be using this, so that's north, south, east and west as far as the project is concerned. So on the west elevation we're going to have some curtain walling. I'll also put some brickwork stuff around here, and we'll put in this sort of crisscross of concrete retaining wall or structural wall sort of in this core area as well. So we'll cover several different options. We won't cover all of it. We'll have done a bit more in class, but this is again just to remind you of the process. So back to the 3D view, and if I sort of look at my ground floor plan, so first of all I'll start off by putting the concrete stuff in. So I'll go to the ground floor plan, and these are the columns. Now what I also did in the ground floor plan was to go to my extents section, and under the view range just edit that so that the cut plane is now back to 1500. It was up to 4 meters, so we could see the cut through the beam, but now we want to just see the columns really. So our cut plane has been dropped back to 1500. So if you're wondering why yours looks slightly different, it's just because of that. And these are our grid lines, and our wall really wants to come along so that the exterior skin sort of hits this line and passes past this column, but we are going to have a problem where the wall just sort of ignores this column and just drives straight through it. So I'll show you how to remedy that later on. So to start off with, we're going to sort of put some core in, sort of center on these center lines, and we'll just bring it from that point to that point and this point to this point, and similarly there to there, and then we'll copy it up to different levels as well. So I'll show you how to copy and paste to aligned levels. So we go to the structure tab and we pick up wall and a structural wall, and we'll hit our drop down for the type of wall. Now these are just the ones that have been preloaded. If you want to create your own structural wall, then find one that's similar, and we'll take this one really, concrete retaining wall. So find one that's similar, and then you can go to edit type and duplicate. I'll cancel out of that, and then once you've duplicated, go into the edit and you can start messing around with the type of concrete that you use. This is concrete cast in situ. You might decide cast in place, C15, or maybe a stronger bond. There might be other ones in there that you can load up from the library, but again, cast in situ, cast in place, I'm not sure what the difference is between that and that. So let's go for this one, cast in place. So what I will do is cancel that and cancel that, and we'll call this a core wall 300 millimeters, and say OK to that, and then we can click on edit and pick this one and change this to C15. In fact, let's just use this and see whether I can find something in the Autodesk materials. If I search for concrete, let's expand this down and take this across a bit. So we've got concrete lightweight, high strength, exposed aggregate, cast in place, broom finish, board finish. Let's go for high strength, why not? And so I'll load this up into the project by clicking on this thing. and then that high strength concrete gets to be the one that's selected, and I can say OK to that. So now I've changed my material. 300mm high strength concrete. We'll say OK to that and OK to that. So that's all that's done to this point, is set our family type, which is a system wall. The type of it is now a core wall, 300mm, made up of concrete. And again, we've got structural usage, bearing, rebar cover, blah blah blah. We're going down, so this is stuff that other people can sort of pick up and develop. And we now look to position it. Okay, so we want to go up, so we don't want to go down, and we want to go, because we're in the ground floor plan, so it's saying here, there's a warning, default wall settings will be changed, base constraint level 0, ground base offset 0, so that's fine, I'm happy with that. So this is what we're looking at, base constraint level 0, base offset 0, top constraint, so we need to go and either set this here first, or we can set it here, and unconnected height, so it's going to go up and it's going to go straight past the beam. Now I don't know the depth of the beam, so I'll give it an offset height of, say, negative 450 for the moment. We can always go and adjust that later, but basically I want it to start at the ground, and I want it to go up to first floor, but not all the way up. I want to stop it at the underside of the beam, and we pick our location line as the wall center line, but we've also got core center line, finished face exterior, finished face interior, core face exterior, and core face interior. So we'll pick the absolute center line of the wall, and then we can start. So click at that point, and then come down to zoom in a bit to this point, hit escape. That breaks the sort of chain, and then we can start again from that point to that point. And once again, hit escape twice, and that'll get out of the command, but just once, it just stops it from sort of linking everything together. And that's that core in there. So I have no idea whether I've got up to the right spot or not, but what I will do is engage a section. So the sections are available on this quick access toolbar, also on the view tab. Okay, so we've got two ways to get the same thing. I'll just click and drag sort of down to this point, and we get the extension box sort of picking the extents of the project. I'll just drag that back so we can see the elevation of this, and then right click, go to view, or double click on the little beaky bit, and we can see what we've got. We got all our crops turned on and active, so I'll just turn that off, and we can see that our walls have come in to this point, and I think that they should be down at this level, because I think these beams are the same thing. So whilst it looks like it's right, it's just that they're being obscured. But I want to select this and just set this value down to maybe minus 800 at the moment, just so we can see whether it will apply that. There we go. There we can see it now as the distance between top and bottom. So with the tape measure tool in the 2D view, this is my first floor level, so I can click there and take it down to that point of 760 is the depth that I want the offset to become. So if I select this wall and right click on that wall and select all instances, visible in view or in entire project, just this view. So visible in view means that it's in this view, not in the entire project, but because these are the only ones we've put in, it makes no difference. And notice that our top offset is sort of not there because they're two different ones. So we want to go negative 760, enter, or hit apply. Sometimes you have to wait a while for it to sort of kick in. And now we've got our walls coming up to the beam from the top of our slab. Okay, so that's how we can sort of adjust the heights of these things. Now there is a way of copying content. I'll go back to the ground floor. Copying content from one level to another. So if I select this wall and then right click on that and select all instances visible in view, that's picked up those 4 walls. And then I go to this little thing here, copy. So copy to clipboard. and then paste. Now, sometimes this is grayed out, but paste aligned to selected levels. So I'll click on that, and I've got my level 1 and my level 2. And then I say OK, and then that should have pasted those to the 2 other floors. So if I go and look in 3D, we can now see that this has been added. Now the only problem is, whilst this is fine, the position of this beam is slightly higher. So we go back to our friendly section, and that now appears in our project browser under sections. So section 1, and we can just see that these walls need to go up slightly higher. So the distance from the top of level to the underside is only 450. So this time we can't select all in entire view, so we can just do a marquee grab around them and then use our filter, and we'll untick floors and structural framing and OK that. So then we've just got these, and then we can set this from -760 to -450 and apply that, and that's fine. So provided we haven't selected all of them, even though they're the same type, it's the offset values are not being transferred across. So it's not similar to a sort of component type thing in SketchUp. These things will behave independently of each other, but they are going to have the same physical characteristics and material characteristics. So that's our core in. Now obviously we would want to sort of put some openings in to some of these things, and as I'm looking at an elevation of one of these, I'll show you how to do that. So if I wanted to put an opening in this wall, for example, I wouldn't need to go to the shaft openings. So by face I could use these, but there's a much easier way with walls. If I select that wall and edit profile, then I'm back to this familiar sketch mode. So if I wanted to put sort of a biggish opening in here, so coming up 3 and a bit meters, and coming across and coming down. To use the trim tool on this, I'm going to have to split this line. So I'll use SL, which is up here. So split element, SL. That's a keyboard shortcut, a useful one to know. And I'll split that wall, or I'll split that line, should I say, into 2 sections. And then I can come and use this trim. And remember to pick the ones you want to keep, not the ones you want to get rid of. And then that's formed this profile in elevation. And then I can say, OK. And that basically gives me a wall, which is a core wall, still the same thing, but it's now got some holes in it. And again, I can just drag this in if I want to change the size of it, drop down, etc. All can be controlled. So back to the 3D sort of look, and then you can see the opening sort of coming through there. So it's still having an effect on the whole thing, but not quite as solid as some of these bits. But because we come up through the floor of these, we might want to have sort of access through, for example, then clearly it's a function of the software to allow you to create all those types of holes. So that's simplicity itself, put in the core walls. A little bit trickier, but not much, is the other types of walls. So we will put now in this brickwork wall coming around the corner, and again it's applying similar principles. So back to the ground floor, and we'll come from this point sort of down. So we'll start at this point. We'll have the brickwork sort of starting there, and that's going to pass through this column. Let's just cancel that. So the brickwork's 102 mil, and we've got 150 there, so it leaves us enough room for a little air gap or a bit of special insulation foam that will just do a good job around there, and also act as some sort of flame barrier as well, because you don't want flames to move between the cavities from room to room. So all these sorts of things have to be considered. So again, we'll go to walls, and this time we are looking at a architectural wall. So we'll go cavity 102, 50, 45. This is the one I used before, so that's fine. And we'll look at the type and the structure. So finish face, air, insulation and structure. And then we've got the interior finish inside of that. So it's just gypsum wallboard, and it's 12.5 mil, and it's stuck straight onto the structure. Sometimes you have an air gap. Sometimes this would be sand cement screed. So either way, it's all up for grabs on the inside face. But I'll also say OK to that and OK to that. So we need to think about where our wall is going to be positioned, and for this one we're not going to choose the wall centerline, but we're going to choose the finished face exterior. Okay, so that's going to line up with this point here, or in fact coming across there to about that point, and then coming down and tracking round on this slab edge. Now it's not always a good thing to use the finished face exterior, but for this example it's going to be suitable. Often you'd want to use the core because the finishes outside can expand off that. Moving the core around can be sometimes problematic, so just bear these sorts of things in mind when you are using this software and you're building something or designing something for real. And again, height, we're going up to the first floor, so that's going to give us our unconnected height. The top offset we'll leave at the first floor for the moment, and we're going to make sure that we've got our finished face exterior as the option, and we're going to use chain as well so we can sort of just continue to click. So I'm going to start, say, there. Now what might happen is that the wall is going to, if I move it up, it's going to be in the right orientation, but if I move it down, I've got the wall sort of sitting the other side of the line. Well, a tap on the space bar on your keyboard will flip that wall for you. So before you do any clicking, just flip that wall, and then you can pan down to the corner of that brick concrete, and then we can come across. I think it's to, where do I have it, to this point, I think. And again, I want to make sure that it comes to about there. I can adjust this later, and then I'll come up to right about here, and then come in to there. So I'll just leave it that. I'll double tap on the escape button. So we've got our wall in, and it's done that thing where it's just ignored completely these columns, but my brickwork is sitting nicely on the edge of my slab, which is really the way I want it. And I need just to extend it a little bit further. So if I use the modify tool, I can select this wall, and the easiest way to align this sort of stuff is to use this align tool. So we'll select this one first. That gives us our line to align to, and then we'll click on this edge, and that's going to align that. Now I could lock it if I wanted, but I don't need to. If that column moves, then I can just move the wall. It's not a crucial link to have that connected to that. So again, we'll just have a little quick 3D view, and so the wall comes up to this point. Now we notice on the upper deck that the floor has come right to this point, so you can see a conflict between the two. So this is where we'd have to go in and think about the position of the concrete slab in relation to the brickwork in this area. We might have to step it back a bit. For the curtain wall, we might want to leave it where it is, but for this bit we might want to step it back. So having this 3D environment to play with throws up all sorts of problems that you might or might not be aware of when you're drafting it up in 2D. So again, it gives you a great chance to sort of modify these things, and the modification of the floor slab couldn't be easier. As we know, we select it and edit boundary, and then we can just chop it in a bit. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but you could if you wanted to. It's asking me would I like the walls to go up to this floor's level, and I'll just say no, because that does sometimes cause problems. So that's why we get a little bit of a problem at that point. And again, if I wanted this this wall to come up to the other level, then I could just select it. And they all select in panels, but I could use the tab key. If I tab once whilst I'm hovering over part of that wall, it's going to select all the linked sections of it, and then I can click on that to select it. I can use this copy to clipboard option and paste a line to selected levels, and I'll just go to the first floor this time and OK, and that's popped that in at first floor level as well. Okay, so it's all starting to look a little bit easier. So in the final bit, we'll tackle curtain walls, and I'll build a curtain wall that's going to sort of wrap around this corner, and then that will be the end of the wall section.